All right, Cody Rupta here. So we're going to take a comprehensive look at septic inspections. This is specifically talking about the construction phase for a septic system or a partial replacement for a septic system. The septic system being the septic tank, the possible pump tank, and the leach field or disposal field. So the first thing you're going to need is a set of plans, all right? For new construction or for any type of reconstruction, there's likely going to be a set of plans, and you should familiarize yourself with them. So specifically for the company that I work for, Van Cleef, all right, we have a key map. This helps you locate the property more in general, and a lot of the time we also list the address of the property on the plan, so that way it's easy to find when you're going to do the inspection. Then you're going to notice that there's basically a map of what the site looks like. It's usually the largest thing on the plans. So if you notice for this particular plan, we've got the existing dwelling here. For this particular project, there's a few other things going on, but the relevant details for the septic are located here. So you've got your existing dwelling, you've got two tanks, all right? You've got the AWPD, which is the advanced wastewater treatment tank. It's advanced systems, something like this, advanced wastewater pretreatment device. Advanced systems are becoming more common because it allows you to make the field smaller. They do have their own, obviously they're more expensive, and a lot of the time you need to have them routinely serviced, and you have to have some type of contract, and it's deed restricted. But anyway, that's beside the point. This is our septic tank for this particular example. And again, that's located first in line. That's where the effluent settles out and has some pre-treatment. Following that is the pump tank. This is pretty common, especially in hilly areas or areas where there's nowhere to put a septic field downgrade from the septic tank. So the pump tank will take the effluent from the septic tank and it will pump it up to the field. On this particular set of plans, we also have a reserve area, a reserve field. That's, depending on the town that you're working in, they may require that you have something like that. In this case, I don't know if it's required or not, but there's a reserve field. This is the field that we're interested in now. This is the proposed septic field. And again, you'll notice here there are small dimensions. It's 19 by 36, 19 feet by 36 feet. So that's the size of the field. That's basically the system. Those are the components we're concerned about. Now, when you're designing this or when you're verifying the installation, you want to make sure that it is 50 feet from the well for the septic tank and pump tank, and the field should be 100 feet from the well. So these are some important details to know. Usually that's verified when the system is staked out, when the field is staked out. Now, the stakeout sometimes is by our survey department, sometimes it's by the contractor or by somebody else, but it's just good to verify that the field is over 100 feet away from the well. You just don't want you don't want treated effluent seeping into the well. That's a problem. So those are the major components. Now, looking down here, you can see the detail for the advanced wastewater pretreatment device or the septic tank. Again, if they're not using advanced treatment, this would be a detail for the septic tank. One of the things that you want to verify for the septic tank is a effluent filter. There's usually this blue cylinder structure that gets put on the basically the outlet T, which you can see here for the advanced treatment. There's an effluent filter that gets put in there. That's kind of a new requirement, I believe, for the state of New Jersey. It may not be required if you're not working in the state of New Jersey, but that's something that I try to verify. All right, there's up here you can see the sizing summary. This basically just says how many bedrooms there are, which is going to dictate your disposal field size and whatnot. You'll have to pardon me, right? The printer is printing out a set of plans. You've also got some control elevations. Again, these are measured based on the survey or based on the existing topography of the site. The contractor will be working off of some type of benchmark. You may want to ask them to show you where that benchmark is and to verify that their elevation equipment is adjusted accordingly. All right. Then you've got the detail for the pump tank. Again, you can see this is the interior of the pump tank. This is a top view. All right. The pump tank also shows you've got your different alarm settings. That's another thing that you're going to verify later on, that the high water alarm works. And then from the pump tank, it gets pumped up to the field. There is a weep hole, right? A weep hole allows the line to drain back to the pump tank because, again, a lot of the time this is uphill. And so we want it to drain back to the tank once it's finished pumping. That weep hole allows that to happen. All right, and this is your field detail. All right, so this details how the field should look. Again, for this particular job, the delivery line comes here. There's a manifold that goes across, and then there's 4 laterals that extend the length of the field. Now you'll notice here too that there's 4 monitoring ports or 4 inspection ports on each corner, right? 1 on each corner. And there's also a deep inspection port. Now this is sometimes in the middle. Oftentimes the contractor will move this to one side or the other. This isn't so important where it's located as long as there is a deep inspection port, right? That's important for, checking out the field or taking a look at it, doing a detailed inspection later on if needed, all right? So deep inspection port and then 4 corner ports that just extend down to the sand or topsoil select fill layer. All right, here you can see another cross section for the bed. This is another good detail to look at, right? One of the things that I look at here is the excavation. So you look at the original grade, you excavate down 84 inches. That's how you know how deep the hole they should be digging is. And you can see here, this is how wide and how long the hole should be. All right, so these are things that we verify on the open ditch excavation inspection or the open pit inspection. You want to verify the size of the hole and the depth of the hole. A lot of the time, I'll use a tape measure to measure down into the hole, and I'll use either a wheel or a longer tape measure to measure the dimensions of the field. Sometimes the contractor has their speed leveler set up, it's basically like a leveling rod that has a device attached to it that beeps when it's at the proper level. You can have them verify the depth of the field using that if you'd like. But again, this cross-section detail shows the excavation depth. It also shows the suitable fill material. So there's 2 layers. We've got the zone of disposal and the zone of treatment. Now, the thickness of these layers depends on what type of system you're doing. If you've got an advanced treatment system, you can actually reduce the zone of treatment, right? You can make that layer thinner because there's some pre-treatment going on. There are also cases where you can make, these different fields or these different zones smaller, or you may have to make them larger in some cases. Again, talk to the design engineer. That's their responsibility to make sure that it's being designed accordingly. All right. And then finally, we also have our pump curve. All right. This isn't really so important for the inspection work. It's just to show what the design of the pump is and to make sure that you're using the right size pump and you're getting the right type of distribution. But yeah, the plan will also show this. You're also going to have a bunch of notes, a bunch of details. All right, you've got a bunch of specifications here. This is basically just to make sure that the contractor is installing everything correctly and that there's no issues. It's also to prevent any type of liability concerns. The important thing, it's definitely good to read through, and I highly recommend reading through this and reading through the administrative code for individual subsurface wastewater systems, septic fields, basically septic systems. But the important part of all of this note area is the inspection phase right here, all right? So it says, the engineer and local health department shall be notified by the installer to inspect the following: stakeout, open ditch, disposal fill sample collection, right? All of these things we need to inspect. Now the stakeout and the open ditch, this kind of happens at the same time, right? You show up to the site, you take a look at where the field is located, making sure that it's 100 feet or more away from the wellhead. You're verifying the size of the open ditch and the depth of the excavation. For the sample collection, right, these several items, the sample collection, basically the contractor will have the sand delivered to the site. It usually takes obviously more than one dump truck, so this is usually an all-day affair or a half-day affair. But the trucks will drop off the sand. You'll visit the site at some point, grab a sample of the sand. Just a little aside, for this project, or for these projects for Van Cleef, we can go to the soil lab. Right here, we've got a bunch of empty coffee containers. Van Cleef drinks a lot of coffee, and so we repurposed the coffee containers to be sand collection containers. All right, there's also more over here, right? So usually I'll take one or two of these and I'll keep it in my car just in case I have to do an inspection and grab a sample. Sometimes you can see on the top, on the lid, we'll write the job number associated with it. Anyway, sorry, the video cut off, but like I was saying, you know, we grab the sand sample in those coffee containers and then bring it back to the lab for testing. If you want to go through the testing procedure for that, just make sure you check out the soil testing tutorial I put together. Anyway, coming back here, where were we? We were talking about inspection stuff. So after we do the sample collection, there's also, so the percolation test, that's what I was talking about. The 2 permeameter test is one of the tests that we use for that. Now, there are some towns that you have to do the perk test in place, which means you have to go out to the field and you have to do the permeability testing in the field, whether that's a 2 permeameter test or just like a standard perk test. You know, you just have to check the town administrative code or check with the health department to see what they want. But a lot of towns will accept the lab test, the 2 permeameter test in the lab, as a permeability test that's acceptable. Another thing that we're looking for, you know, some of the things we inspect, we're inspecting the septic tank or the advanced wastewater treatment tank at the site location. So that's just verifying the size and material of the tank. Same thing with the pump tank, by the way, just verifying the size and material. And you can see that we use a lot of Flemington Septic Tank Company tanks or Flemington precast tanks or an approved equal. So if it's not one of those, just make sure it was approved by the design engineer. After that, you're going to check the stone and lateral emplacement. So again, like we mentioned before, we've got you know, this cross section of the septic bed. You can measure what the excavation is, but you can also see what the level of infiltration is right here. This is the top of the sand layer. You could potentially measure down 18 inches from the grade to get that layer, or like I mentioned before, you use a speed leveler. And if you notice here, we've got 12 inches of 1.5 inch clean crushed stone that goes on top of the sand layer. And then for this job, since it's pressure dosing, we're using 1.25 inch PVC laterals with a 3-inch manifold. Again, on pressure jobs, it's usually 1.25 inch PVC. On gravity systems, there's usually a distribution box, and then the pipes are usually, I think, 3 inches is one of the common ones. But anyway, that's what you check after that. You just want to make sure that it's at the right height. They're using the right thickness of stone. They're using the right kind of stone, and that the pipe layout is similar to what's shown on the plan. Now, these pipes, you know, again, this one has a manifold to distribute the flow because it's a pressure dosing system. If this were a gravity system, there would be a box right here, and from that box, all of the lateral pipes would connect to it. And you would just make sure that when you pour water into that D box, into the distribution box, that water is getting to each of the laterals equally. All right. Sometimes we do it with a garden hose. Sometimes you just get a couple buckets of water, you dump it in and just make sure. And sometimes they install speed levelers, which are just small little pieces that fit into the pipe, and you can basically turn them so that way all of the openings are equal, and so the pipes are getting equal distribution. But anyway, on a pump system, instead of pouring water in, they actually have to turn on the pump. So they'll turn on the pump. They'll usually lift up the float to activate it, and it'll start pumping water out to the field. You'll know it's working because, one, you'll hear the water rushing through the pipes. You should be able to see the perforations in the pipes expelling water. And at the end of these, at the end of the laterals, there's also a hole drilled in to a cap, and there should be water coming out the ends of that lateral cap. All right, so that's how you would check the equalization of flow. And that's the last checkbox item here, right? D-box equalization / pump test. While that pump test is going on, you're also going to want to check the high level alarm. So usually what they'll do is they'll put a shovel in here, they'll lift up this float, and then you'll be able to hear the alarm. Sometimes you can hear it from the field. Sometimes you have to walk closer to the dwelling just to hear the alarm, but make sure you check that while they're doing the pump test. And then the last thing that we're looking for is the backfill and the final grade. So once the system's complete, once you've done the pump test, they'll cover everything up. You've got your topsoil layer here. It's shown in the cross section, and a lot of the time they'll seed it and put hay on top of it so that the grass regrows. Sometimes it's the contractor that does it. Sometimes it's the homeowner, but that's usually what happens. And then we come back at that point, take pictures, make sure that the slopes look all correct, and they didn't leave the site area a mess. And at that point, a lot of the time we'll do our as-built tape measures. So the as-built can be done a couple of different ways. Sometimes we have the survey crew go out, especially if it's like a new construction, like a totally new dwelling and everything. Sometimes if it's an existing dwelling, or if it's just an alteration to the septic system, we'll take tape measures. So you'll take a tape measure from each of the 4 corner inspection ports, and you're trying to tie that to something that's some permanent feature for the property. Usually, ideally, we use a building corner, some type of benchmark, or like a property corner if that's available. We've also used telephone poles in the past, utility poles. Those work pretty well. But you want something permanent that's not going to move over the years to tie down where the features are on your septic field. You're also going to want to do the same for the deep inspection port that's part of the septic field, and you're going to want to do it for the manhole for the pump tank, the manhole for the septic tank, and occasionally if there are cleanouts along the line, sometimes you'll want to nail down where the location is for that. That's just so that way in a future inspection, all of these components can be located, and we can confirm that it was built in accordance with the plan in the proper location. So again, sometimes you'll use the wheel measure if the grade is very flat and clean, but if you want a really accurate measure, I definitely recommend using like the 100 or 200 foot tapes and just tying it down to those features. But yeah, the as-built is super important. Once you take all of those measurements, a lot of the time I'll find some empty area on the plan and I'll write down like the as-built measurements to each of the features. I'll label each of these features. So like this corner would be A, B, C, D, and then building corner would be like 1 and 2. And so like 1 to A would be this, 1 to B would be this. And I would write all of that down here just so that way, somebody who's looking at the plans can take a look at it. You'll see that as part of the inspection that I'm going to be doing for this project, but I'm just explaining it to you ahead of time. We've shown you what the plans look like and kind of a general layout on how the inspections will go. Now we're going to go out into the field and take a look at each of the components of the inspection that are related to this list. All right, let's go. All right, so this is what the open pit would look like for the septic system. You can see it's quite deep. You can see the stakes marking where the extents of the bed should go. Again, you can measure down to the bottom of the excavation with the tape measure, or this is the speed leveler, all right? So that attaches to the leveling rod and it'll let you know that it's at the bottom. Basically what we're doing here is we're walking along the side of the bed with the wheel, taking measurements to make sure that it's the right size. So you zero this out by stepping on this little piece, just like that, all right? You line it up with the edge of the bed, you wheel it out. All right, 19. And then you confirm that with the plan. 19, look at that, all right. And then you would do the same for the other extents, right, for the length of the bed. That's the open pit inspection. You also want to make sure that you take a picture of the open pit just so that it's easier, you know, just so that it's for our records. So you have that. All right, so we're here at the top of sand inspection. I grabbed my sand sample collection. It's not quite at the top of sand yet. You can see where the section has been flattened out here, right? That's at the level that it should be. You can see the speed leveler over there. That's how we know it's at the proper level. There's excess sand over here. We actually have a little bit too much on this project, so they're taking some of it out, but they'll level everything to be even with this, and that's the top of sand inspection. That's what you're looking for. After this, they're gonna put the stone on top along with the laterals, and you know, we'll inspect it once they connect everything and take a look at it then. So you can see here, this is the tank inspection. They have both tanks in. All right, right now I'm walking on top of the pump tank. They haven't connected it yet. Eventually they will attach a line here and run it out to the field over there. All right, but you can see these tanks are coupled in series here. You can also see the effluent filter right here. All right. This device just kind of filters it a little bit better as it exits the septic tank. And it's required for most of the towns that we service right now. It might be a state requirement, actually. What they're doing now is they're filling up the tank just to make sure that there's no leaks or anything like that. I imagine it might also be to fill up the pump tank, which we'll need for the pump test later on. All right, you can also see this is an inspection port here. You can see the line that goes out and it runs out to the house and connects over there. One of the things you may want to look at is the side of the tank. If it's exposed, right, it should say, you know, the date that it was cast and the sizing and where it's from. That's just another way that you can verify that the tanks are the correct size and make and material. So you can see down here the weep hole when the pump is on. Then you got to run out to the field. And you can see back here that the water is coming out, the laterals at the end. All All right. Good. So that's what you're looking for the pump run. You're making sure that the water exits at the very end over here. You also want to check the alarm. I heard it, but I'm not sure you could hear it in the video. But you want to check the alarm to make sure the high water alarm works. And that's the pump run. All right, so once the pump run is done, they're gonna regrade everything to bring it, to a final grade condition. And as you can see right now, they're putting hay down. They already put down the grass seed. We're gonna do our as-built measurements now. What you want to do, like I mentioned earlier, is when you're doing as-built measurements, you want to take measurements from permanent features. Specifically, building corners are the best. So in this example, we're gonna use this building corner right here and this building corner over here. All right, you can see on the plan we have it labeled, so building corner A and B, and then we also create like a small table kind of setup, right? A, B, and then the S is for septic, P is for pump. 1, 2, 3, 4 are the 4 corners of the bed. All right, and we're basically going to measure from each of these corners to the features in the bed. All right, so you can see there's the septic tank and pump tank are right here in this area, and then the corners are all the way down there. There's small flags that will that are indicating where the corners are, where the inspection ports are that we're going to measure to. So we're going to take. Sometimes we use the wheel. The wheel is good, especially if it's nice flat ground like we have now. But if you have a second person, you can use the tape measure. This guy. It's a lot easier to use. You can use this solo. You just have to take this piece and like hook it onto something or like put something heavy on it so that it stays. But with 2 people, a tape works really well, and this is just a little bit more accurate. All right, so we're gonna do the as-built now. Again, now, I've got Anthony going out there with the tape measure to each of the corners. Hopefully this is long enough. It may not be. It may be over 200 feet to get out there. But I'm basically holding it steady on the building corner. He's taking it to each of those inspection ports, each of the flags. That is probably hard to see from here, but he's standing over it, checking the measurement, and then writing it down in that table. So we're at building corner A right now, and he's measuring to number 1 on the field, right? The first inspection port that we labeled as 1. And then he'll do the same for 2, 3, 4, and then we'll come back and we'll go to the second building corner and we'll take the same type of measurements. Again, this is a lot easier with 2 people, but it's not required, all right? A lot of the time I'm doing this myself, and that's when the wheel comes in real handy. Or, again, like I said, I would maybe take like a rock or something and put this piece down on the ground and put like a heavy rock on top of it, or, some other method of anchoring it. Sometimes you can even ask one of the field guys and they'll help you out. All right, so the tape measure is too short for the job that we're doing right now, so I'm gonna do a quick tutorial on how to use the wheel. It's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. All right, basically you wanna look all the way close to here. You can see that it has the number there. You've got your feet, and then there's also inches. To reset it, you're gonna want to press this button here. Right? I usually press it a few times because sometimes it gets jammed and it's hard to read. Like, you see how it is now? You see how that zero's messed up? Boom, we're good. All right, and then all you have to do is walk in a straight line. If this will focus. All right, you just walk in a straight line and it'll measure 18 feet. All right, you can also reset this with your foot. Again, I recommend kicking it a few times so that way you know it resets. And that's how you use the wheel. It's real simple. All right, one of the things that you may run into with the wheel specifically are landscaping features or a tree. So in this case, what I do is I line this up with the area I'm going to, all right? Those flags all the way in the distance, and I'll walk. Oh no, a landscaping feature.
And then from here, I'll take my steps and I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom, put it down. Oh wow, there's no landscaping features here. Good. Continue. Once you pass the obstruction, we go another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're back on line, and you continue your measurement. Here we go. This is a good way to get your steps in. And 150, nice.